Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Today, we are attempting what might be our most ambitious deep dive yet. We're looking at a 21st century legal case.
Right, involving VPNs, complex systems theory, all very modern.
But we're going to try and understand it using philosophical frameworks that are, in some cases, thousands of years old.
Exactly. And you brought us just a fascinating stack of sources for this. I mean, we've got official court judgments, appeal rulings.
The legal documents.
The legal stuff, yeah. But then we also have the defendant's own blistering critiques that he wrote from prison. And on top of that, these incredibly dense academic analyses.
Drawing on thinkers like Wang Kuzi and Guyanwu.
All the heavy hitters. Neo-Confucianism, even the logicians. It's a real mix.
So our mission really is to synthesize all of this. This isn't just about the legal fine print. It's about seeing this fundamental conflict between state stability and the ancient moral duties of an intellectual.
All distilled into one case. The prosecution of Chen Jingyuan.
Let's start with the facts then. Who is Chen Jingyuan?
So he's a 47-year-old scholar. And he's highly credentialed. He has a PhD in physics. His specialty is complex systems theory.
And in 2022, he was arrested.
He was, and later sentenced to 1 year and 8 months in prison.
And the charge itself, it's a bit of a famous one, isn't it? Picking quarrels and provoking trouble. That's
what's often called the pocket crime because it can, be used to cover a lot of ground.
So what did they actually accuse him of doing?
The state's case was that between 2019 and 2022, he was using a VPN and some chat software to, and this is the quote, scatter false statements and insult or attack the state leadership.
And what did that actually look like in practice? Was he writing manifestos?
Not really. It seems his actions were mostly forwarding content, things like academic commentary, some critical art, opinion pieces, and he was sharing this with a relatively small circle of contacts.
Okay, so let's get into the court's reasoning. How did they justify the conviction?
Well, this is the crux of the whole thing. The first and second rulings, they rely on this one massive premise, that because Chen has a very high education and knowledge level, he should have known better. That's the phrase they use, Yingbian bi Xu.
He should have been able to distinguish right from wrong.
Right. And because of that, he clearly knew, Bingzi, that the content was disruptive, and therefore his actions caused severe social disorder.
So his intelligence is basically proof of his guilt.
It's the cornerstone of their case. This idea that, high education equals intent. It's a conviction based on identity, not just on a proven act.
And they doubled down on this during the appeal.
Oh, absolutely. The appeal was dismissed without an open hearing. Shin Bu Kaiting. And the court's reasoning was that Chen had failed to submit any new evidence.
So his logical arguments, his critiques of their premise, they just didn't count.
They were treated as irrelevant.
Okay, so now let's flip to Chen Jingyuan's defense. Because he didn't just deny it, did he? He really went on the offensive.
He did. He tried to systematically dismantle the entire judicial logic. And this is where, things escalate from a simple legal disagreement to a real philosophical confrontation.
What were his main points?
Well, first, he argued that the things he shared weren't false information in a criminal sense. It was political commentary, it was satire, it was academic debate.
Things that are supposed to be open for discussion.
Exactly. Then he attacked the idea that he had criminal intent, the Mingzi. He said, look, as a systems scholar, my entire job is to be a skeptic, a Huai Zinze. He engages with all sorts of viewpoints.
That's a fantastic point. It's a total contradiction.
It is.
They're prosecuting him for the very mental process skepticism analysis that his profession demands of him.
Absolutely. And then he brought in the numbers. He pointed to his low follower count, the minimal number of times things were forwarded. He argued his actions couldn't possibly meet the very high legal bar for severe social disorder.
Right. If there's no severe chaos, there's no crime.
The crime isn't satisfied. But the court, it seems, just wasn't interested in that kind of factual, logical attack.
Which led him to his most serious accusation, this idea of identity-based guilt presumption. Yeah,
he was essentially saying the court's logic was, you are smart, therefore you are guilty.
He also pointed out the selective enforcement.
A huge point. Zik. He noted that the original authors of the content, and, probably hundreds of other people who shared it more widely than he did, they weren't prosecuted. Only him.
And we have to mention his blood letter. I mean, the language he uses there is just incredible.
It's ferocious. He calls the authorities a judicial black society criminal gang.
A sikleibang ishili tuantang.
and accuses them of a zero-evidence start and of fabricating evidence and abusing their power. I mean, it is a complete and total rejection of the court's moral authority.
And that level of confrontation, that's really our cue to leave the courtroom behind and step into the philosophical arena.
Because the sources we have argue that this isn't just a flawed legal case. It represents a kind of profound structural breakdown in political theory.
Okay, so let's start with that first big philosophical idea. The separation of truth and reality, the Ellen-Shi split.
Yes, principle versus facts. And this takes us straight to Wang Fuzi, the Ming King scholar.
And what was his core idea?
It was radical for its time. Wang Fuzi's whole thing was that truth, it can't just exist in a vacuum. It has to be rooted in real-world affairs in Engshi. He famously said, to speak of principle apart from affairs, the principle must be false.
So how do the sources apply that to this case?
They argue the verdict is a principle inversion. Ellen did Aussie.
Meaning
The judiciary started with the political principle they wanted to uphold.
are you
Absolute, unquestioned order and stability.
Yeah.
And then they worked backwards.
trying to make the facts fit the principle?
Exactly. They ignored the actual lack of any severe chaos on the ground in order to uphold the principle that political criticism must cause chaos. The political need came first.
The facts had to be sort of reverse engineered to fit the desired outcome.
Precisely. And this is supported by another scholar from that era, Jingyuan, who was a huge advocate for seeking truth from facts. Shi.
He was all about evidence-based governance.
Yes, and he warned against what the critiques here call virtual principle governance, Tengzi. That's when you govern using abstract, vague, catch-all terms.
Like picking quarrels.
Exactly like picking quarrels. It's a term that can mean almost anything. And Guyan Wu's warning was that when you do that, when you replace clear, factual evidence with political abstractions, you seriously damage the integrity of the state itself.
This feels like a good place to bring in the second major theme, which is the relationship between the government and the people, the idea of minben.
Right. The people is the foundation. And again, it's Wang Fuzi who took this idea and really ran with it. He said, the way is not in the ruler, but in the people.
So the ruler is just a manager.
A deputy acting on behalf of the people. Zhongwei Minyi. The ruler isn't the source of power. They are just the instrument of the people's will.
So if you accept that premise, then a ruler using the law to shut down public discussion, that seems like a massive conflict of interest.
It's a corruption of the entire foundation. The critiques argue this case shows principle being privatized and the people being virtualized.
What does that mean, the people being virtualized?
It means the concept of the people becomes an empty phrase, just a tool used to justify state control, while the actual voices of the people are silenced. Public debate is treated as a threat, not a right.
And this ties right back to Guyanwu's famous line.
The rise and fall of the world is the responsibility of every common man. Exactly. So if Chen was just trying to live up to that responsibility, to point out what he saw as flaws, then punishing him for it, it signals a kind of moral collapse.
The sources call it the decline of the scholar's way.
A public reason collapse. And Guyanwu's ultimate warning here is, well, it's pretty chilling. He says that silence enforced by fear isn't stability.
Why is it?
It's a sign of national doom.
That's a huge claim, that by criminalizing criticism, you're actually putting the state on the path to chaos, not stability.
It completely reframes what you mean by order, doesn't it? Is order just the absence of noise, or is it a system that can absorb and process criticism?
Let's shift to the scholar's moral substance then, because the sources also bring in the new Confucians to talk about the, let's say, the quality of the justice here.
Right. This is where we get the ideas of thinkers like Shili. His focus was on Tiam Yang Biuer.
Its substance and function are non-dual.
Yes. So the law is the function, the yang. But for it to be legitimate, it has to flow from a deep moral substance, the tian. A moral root.
So if I'm getting this, they're saying that even if you follow all the legal procedures perfectly, if the moral foundation is rotten,
then the law itself is just a dead machine, a hollow set of rules. And the verdict against Chen is cited as the perfect example of function separate from substance. They went through the motions arrest, trial, appeal, but the moral core, respect for truth, for open debate, it was missing. So the result is law without heart. Wu Xingji Fiero.
This connects so clearly to the tragedy of intellectual freedom championed by the modern historian Chen.
His ideal for the scholar was independent spirit and free thought.
And the sources argue that using a charge like sun xin zishi against a scholar is the modern-day shackle of common doctrine.
It's a way to forcibly bind the scholar's mind. You're basically making their essential function critical thinking, asking hard questions, a criminal act.
It's just a tragic paradox. You're punishing someone for doing the very thing society needs them to do.
It is. And we even see critiques from the late king reformer Tan Tong. He was a martyr for his beliefs, and he argued that benevolence, or Ren, finds its highest meaning in communication and passage.
He believed in shattering the net of constraint.
Zhong Shui Wing Glo. And if you think about it, Chen's use of a VPN for international communication, sharing ideas from outside, that's the ultimate expression of this idea of passage.
So punishing him for that is the opposite of Ren.
According to this critique, yes. It's the judiciary actively building a new net of constraint, using the law to stop diverse perspectives from getting through.
That's a remarkable way to frame it. The prosecution isn't just about one man, it's about turning the very act of seeking truth into a threat to political order.
Which brings us back to that charge itself, Shimsinzishi.
It seems like every philosophical school had something to say about this term.
Pretty much. The Mohists, the logicians, they all criticized it because it enables arbitrary law. So they call it semantic violence.
Semantic violence.
Yet you're applying these abstract, loaded labels like rumor or severe chaos without needing to meet a strict, factual burden of proof. It lets the law become a private tool for the ruler, rather than a public objective standard.
So what we have is this huge structural conflict. On one side, the state's highest value is absolute order, wending.
And on the other, the scholar's highest value is the pursuit of truth, Kizan.
And in this case, the judicial process clearly picked a side.
It did. The Neo-Confucian critique really hammers this point. They say the court prioritized utility, or li, which is political stability over righteousness, or yi, which is the moral need to allow for truth and criticism.
And that's why his education became a weapon against him.
Exactly. The high education equals guilt. Premise flows directly from that. Knowledge isn't an asset for righteousness, it's a threat to utility. It reveals this deep political anxiety about independent thought.
Before we wrap up, there's one last really fascinating perspective in the sources. The school of strategists, the Zhongyangji.
Ah, yes, the ancient masters of diplomacy and strategic maneuvering.
How do they see Chen's actions, not just as a defendant, but as a player?
Well, they would see his refusal to plead guilty, his writing the blood letter, his whole principled defense, not as weakness, but as a classic strategic maneuver.
He wasn't just losing a case, he was making a move.
He was using moral conviction, Dai Zizong, to challenge the state's raw physical power. In the strategist's view, his public defiance is a form of power in itself. He's turning a legal defeat into a kind of moral victory.
Forcing them to reckon with the man, not just the crime.
Exactly.
So when you put it all together, what this deep dive really shows is that the Jingyuan case it's more than just a case. It's a structural conflict laid bare. It's the political order's drive for total control clashing violently with the fundamental duties of an intellectual.
Yes, and the stark reality of his protests, that blood letter where he's citing everyone from Wang Fuzi to Karl Popper, it stands as this incredibly powerful final testimony. He's staking his entire claim on academic integrity and human dignity.
So the final question, the warning that all these philosophical critiques seem to converge on, is one for you to really think about. If the pursuit of stability requires the suppression of truth, of reason, of independent thought, what kind of order is that, really?
And if the silence that law enforces just creates a false peace, a woihe, and if wisdom and skepticism are effectively criminalized, does that political structure not contain the very seeds of its own chaos and decline? Is it not doomed to fulfill the exact cycle of governance and chaos that these ancient scholars warned us about centuries ago?